Lifeboat Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Lifeboat. I am Captain Tommy, and tonight we're going to talk about some heavy stuff, and sort of keeping in a similar vein that we've been doing lately. It's an opportunity for all parties involved to meet number 1 and get to know my bobbleheaded partner a little bit more intimately. And I'll tell you something, people. I consider Mark a brother, and that's not just one of those phrases that people throw out there. Sometimes, the brother thing gets thrown around, but I most sincerely consider him a brother. And in spite of that, what you're going to be hearing tonight is something that I'm going to be hearing for the first time as well. On multiple occasions, we have discussed the possibility of discussing this subject together. Both of us, there are so many things that Mark and I share. We're similar in so many ways. It's one of the reasons that we've partnered on this project. And one of the other things is that we have both, at one time or another, attempted to take our own lives, which is not incredibly unique in the in the rehab community. You hear that sometimes quite often, but it's a subject that we're bringing up tonight for a couple of reasons. And one of them is that in the last couple of weeks, I have probably had 3 or 4 conversations with people that lasted a long time, trying to ensure that people didn't hurt themselves. And I'm not complaining about that, people, at all. But last night after the live feed, I was at it until about 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to work with somebody that was in some pretty serious withdrawal and was considering a permanent solution to a part-time problem. And because of how often it comes up, Mark and I talked about this and thought it was probably high time that we did a show on suicide. It is it's becoming more prevalent, which is obviously not something that anybody likes hearing. But since tonight is the night that we're talking about suicide and sort of our suicide awareness show, I'm going to be giving Mark the opportunity to tell us a little bit about his attempt, and hopefully this is something that, in doing so, like so many other things that Mark does here, this is going to help affect, in a positive way, a lot of people. How are you today, my brother?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, guys, and Tommy. Yeah, yeah, this is hard for me. I'm just gonna say it. I come out here a lot, guys, and I share a lot of my own life with you, and I've done that even on my other channel. But this is something that I've opened up to not very many people about. This is this is hard, and I get everybody's situation's hard, so I'm not trying to make mine harder than anybody else's because I don't think that it is, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Hopefully, you guys can relate and maybe get something from this, and that's my hope in sharing this. It and I guess I would start by saying, even on our disclaimer and down there on the bottom left of your screen, there is a suicide helpline. Um, if you ever find yourself in a spot that you need to talk to somebody, that you really think you're going to follow through with something, and you can't get a hold of anybody that you need to talk to, because there are those times we try to stay as available as we can, but the fact of the matter is we can't stay available 100% of the time. We have families, we've got everything you guys are doing, so are we. And that's why it's great to have the whole crew, right? Because you got more people you can reach out to than just one or two. And let me tell you guys, they come through. You guys come through more times than not. I don't know if there's ever been a time that there was not. I don't think I've ever heard anybody come on here, Tommy, and say that they couldn't get a hold of somebody.
No.
I've never heard that ever, and that's amazing to me. But if that ever happens to you, please call that line. Please. It's not gonna. It can't make anything worse, right? It can't.
Amen.
It can't. I mean, the worst that can happen to you is you hang up. I mean, honestly, and I know that that's a national hotline, but we use the national one for a reason, because they can help you anywhere you're at. There's places everywhere for this, guys. And if by chance you can't, and I know that probably will never happen, that you couldn't get a hold of them, go to your local hospital if it's the middle of the night, because oftentimes things that what we're talking about here happens at night. More times than not. I don't know the exact statistic on that, but I know it's a lot higher for nighttime than it is day. And there's a lot of reasons for that we don't really even need to bring up. It's just that's a fact.
Yep.
And I share this because, again, I want to help people, but it helps me to get it out, That's with our addiction and stuff too. It's the same thing. It's the same principle, guys. The more you can talk about it, the more you hear it, the more you understand why you felt like you feel. And we've said this before, guys. This is one thing that you can't come back from. You can't fix this. If you do something like that, you can't fix it. And I'm not using the word for a reason, guys. Okay, it's in the title, it's on the thumbnail, but if I start blasting that word out there, the algorithm just won't like it.
They'll bury it. There's no question. And I'll tell you something. We're about 10 minutes in, and the number of people that I've already seen in the chat, people, if you see me looking off, it's because I got computer screens everywhere, so I can try to keep up with this. And the number of people in the chat that are already talking about times in their lives that that they have either attempted it or lost friends or whatever. So obviously this is something that is going to touch, a lot of lives. I think we use the word or the phrase normal people with air quotes quite often here on the boat, because here on the lifeboat, everybody here for the most part is in recovery. All of us have struggled with addiction of one kind or another. And obviously I don't think I'm going to shock anyone when I tell you that the rates for people, checking out that way are higher among people in recovery and people in active drug use than it is in the regular, air quotes, normal part of society. So, Mark, how long ago was this?
Well, my daughter just turned 15, and she was still in her crib. So That tells you roughly. I don't know the exact date, but yeah, it's when you go through stuff like that, most people think, I'll remember it because it's so traumatic. Well, that's either going to happen to you or you're going to just wipe it from your brain.
Right.
There's usually you might find those few, and I'm a little bit like this. I remember some of it, and I think that my mind has actually blacked some of it out. And it's not intentional by no means. It's just my brain trying to cope, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it was traumatic, It wasn't something that, I don't know, and I think getting to that point is the place where you can actually get help. That time frame, and when you start thinking about things like that, up until the time that you think you're going to do something, that's the time that you can get help. But I will say this too: it's also the time that you're probably less receptive of advice. Okay, so that's what makes this conversation so hard, because even though people are trying to help you, you don't want to hear it. You honestly don't. If you're really serious about doing something like that, you're not going to want to hear anybody, because you think that you came to the end of everything. I mean, that's really honestly what it amounts to. And I think, and I still think this, is that it's one of the most selfish things a person can do. I can't explain it any other way. It is.
I've heard people push back on that, but I got to agree with you 100%. One of the greatest quotes, or the greatest way that I ever heard this described, is that the act of taking your own life does not stop suffering. What it does is it puts it on the shoulders of all of the people that you love. The suffering continues. It's just that you don't, you no longer choose to deal with that. But what you leave in your wake, what you leave behind is just, it's devastating.
It is.
And, I don't make light of this, and I'm not saying that people in that situation, I tried this, people. There was a point in my life where I did try to do this, and tried to do it with the use of a needle and a whole lot of heroin. And so, I understand the mindset, but as so many other things in my life during that part of who I was just a selfish, worthless human being. The drugs made it so that I didn't care about anybody but myself. And through that period of time, all I could think about was my suffering, and I didn't care about putting it on other people. I'm not that same person today, but for the grace of God, a little over 3 3/4 grams of heroin and 2 shots didn't do the trick. So I am blessed. And, one of the reasons that, I'll stay on the phone with somebody until 3:30 in the morning is because I feel like I really got a second chance that a lot of people wouldn't have had. And I'm blessed because, as I say, very often here, I love getting up in the morning and I hate going to bed at night. I'm living the dream. I'm living and I'm not saying that the way most people do, living the dream. No, I'm living the dream. I'm every single day I have a smile on my face and I am happy, and I do it without chemicals. If it's not, I know that this is hard. I really do. I get it. But why don't you walk us through, instead of like just getting to the incident, why don't you walk us through what was going on in your mind leading up to this? I
think that's the best thing to do, because I think, like I said before, and like you just articulated, that's the time where we're going to get help, right? The actual act of doing that is not when you can get help. You just don't. Let me say this first and foremost, it's not an overdose that you have a chance of coming back from, right? In your case, it might be a little different because you tried to do it in that realm. But for most people that do this kind of thing, it's almost, people try to find the most instantaneous thing that they can, and less painful. That's really what it boils down to, and I've had people in my life do this, right? And you try to look at what they were going through, and so you start relating yourself to them and all this and that. It just goes down a dark road. But for me, it started with self-pity. And that's the God's honest truth, just being straight up. My life was so bad, so this and so that, right? And it might not have been the best thing that was going on. And a lot of it revolved around the job I was in and everything else that was going on. And something in my head, it just wasn't right, And so leading up to that, I know people are probably wondering, were you addicted during this? No, I wasn't.
Really? So this was a time in your life where prior to...
I was on the opiates, but I was not actively abusing, I guess I should say, if that makes any sense. I had my script and this and that, and doing all the things that we did. And I might have started doctor shopping and stuff at that point. I can't really remember. I mean, I know I was on pain medication because I remember going to the psych facility and then taking wouldn't give me any of them.
Right.
You know, so and honestly, that didn't bother me then. It was, you know, because looking back on it, I remember like the next day I started to feel really uncomfortable and really really anxious, but I thought it was because of what I was going through in other realms.
So what it was probably, like so many people who abused opiates, a lot of times, you may not realize you're addicted. A lot of people get sick the first time they quit and don't put one and one together and get two.
Right.
So you may have been addicted, but you sure weren't aware of that fact at that point.
Exactly. That's exactly where it came from. You definitely hit that. Yeah, that's really where I was at, right? And I was going through, and this is probably the biggest factor on why my mind went where it went. That I was going through a lot of health problems. Okay, and that becomes a very very serious thing in your mind after that time that you expect to be able to get over those kinds of things elapses, and now you're a year past it still dealing with it.
Right.
It really starts to cram in your mind, and again guys, I don't want you to think that I feel this way anymore, okay, because I don't. I know.
Well, we got you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people understand that I don't think this way anymore. I've changed the way that I think, right? Because obviously if I was going to do something like that, my mindset was just not in the right place. And I'm not ever going to sit here and argue somebody, if somebody's really sick, should they do something like this or not? That's not what this is about. This is about somebody that's just trying to live their life, and things happen and you go into situations and how you
Amen. Amen. That is definitely, and I think that's a pretty legitimate point. I have seen these discussions end up down the Dr. Kevorkian rabbit hole. And what we're talking about are people with, a fine physical condition who, are, let's concentrate on that.
That have a lot of, either a lot of life left or just don't really, that you're really not
Correct.
that. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Well played, brother.
Yeah, and I just want everybody to understand that, because I get all the other stuff, and we're not going to talk about that part because it's not part of my story. It's just not. I like a lot of my story. It's not part of the normal, right? But so I start having thoughts, right? And one day you just wake up and you start having these thoughts like, am I ever going to get to be healthy again? Am I ever going to get to do this? Am I going to get to do that? And, at first those kinds of questions are okay. You ask yourself that, and then just like everything else we talk about, when you say something, it's all about how you react to it. So when you get a thought in your mind, and we talked about this with addiction, it's how you react. It isn't about the actual thought or trigger that happens. It's about how you react to all that. And at that point, I was so far in myself that, when it first started, I look back on it and it snowballed. It started here and it just slowly crept up. And I know some people go from here to 100, like immediately, right? And again, I would say that people that go from 0 to 100 real quick, that's a trigger, right? And the other stuff is the stuff that when you start, like, if you're going to relate this to addiction, it would be the stuff that you start relapsing really slow through your mental faculties. You start thinking about stuff and it comes on slow. And for me, that's kind of what it was. And unfortunately, I didn't see how far down I was, and and again, guys, I'm not going to sit here and like play a pity party, because that's not what this is about. I just got myself to that point where I felt really, really bad about myself, about trying to take care of my family, and my health was just all jacked up. That was in my head. We're programmed a certain way to think that we need to do certain things. And the thing of it is, guys, that for me, I didn't need to feel that way. My family had my back 100% of the time. It just crept in, and it was me. It wasn't anybody else. And as a matter of fact, I guess I'm going to have to start with that night that I did that, because
Okay.
it'd be easier for me to say that and then kind of walk it back a little bit to tell you
Sure.
how I got there. But we oftentimes wonder when somebody's talking about this subject if it's a cry for help or are they really going to do it. Um, and I would say to those people, I would say you have to treat it as though they're going to do it. You can't treat it any other way. You really seriously cannot, because if you do, and then you're wrong. I mean, you know what I'm saying there. I mean,
Oh Lord, yes.
you got to just assume that that's where they're at, whether they are or not. And what that does is it allows you to get into some more conversation. Then you can even judge it even better. But again, I was already to that point at that night that I was going to follow through. And people are going to ask me, well, what did you do? Well, through the course of a week, I worked at a local factory, and we had these big silo lines. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen those big corrugated, like ribbed tubes. Okay, and you put hose clamps on them, and the plastic would fly through these tubes by a vacuum. So we had massive amount of these tubes. I had through the course of a week, I collected some of that tubing. And when I chuckle like that, guys, that's a nervous chuckle. I'm not laughing. It's just me. But anyway, my plan, I was going to, and the reason I had the tube was because I was going to, hook it up to my exhaust, start the car up, and go to sleep. That's pretty much what it was going to be. I mean, and that's, and I look at that, I look back on that, and you know what? That was even talking about ending it, a way to end it. That's even a coward way to end it, to be honest. I didn't even have the guts to really do the other stuff that a lot of people would choose over that. But I was going to take the hose, obviously, stick it to my exhaust, stick it in my window. But I did not want to do it here in my garage because my family. I want my family to find me.
So that was still going on. So you were not so far gone that that wasn't in your head.
Yeah, I had made plans, and my plan. It's crazy because you start thinking about things you never thought you would think about, like life insurance.
Right.
You're trying to take care of your family, so you're trying to work a way around that. And I never did figure that part out. I mean, I would have had to do it a whole different way if I wanted to make sure my family got the life insurance off of that. And I don't want to go into detail on how to do stuff like this because that's not really what it's about. But that's what I did, right? I brought all this stuff home through the course of a week. And what I did was I waited for my family went to bed. And again, my daughter was an infant. She was still in her crib. Yeah. Anyway, my two boys, they shared a room. So everybody goes to bed. The boys are going to go to school the next day. My wife's going to go to work, all that kind of thing. And at that point, I went into the rooms and started saying goodbye to them while they were sleeping. Didn't wake up either one of my boys. Didn't even wake up my daughter. But obviously I'm crying. I'm doing all that stuff, but in a quiet way. And I go into my daughter's room and I pick her up and and I'm apologizing the whole time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know your family loves you. I'm trying to justify all of it in my head still. Because even at that point, even though I was going to do it, I knew it was selfish. I knew, right? And I think most of us do. If you really think about it, I think you kind of do know that. So, but anyway, I pick her up and I'm saying goodbye to her and I'm crying and stuff. And I put her back down. And, yeah. I go to walk out the back door and my wife was standing there and said, "What the hell are you doing?" The baby monitor was on. And I didn't even think about it.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And
so she heard all of it.
And, guys, that's what saved me. I mean, it's really that simple. And obviously we had to sit down and have conversations and stuff after that. And I ended up going to the psych ward for 4 or 5 days. trying to get some help, but that's after the fact. But sitting there and telling her everything that was going on with me, and the whole time she's like, "You knew you could have come talk to me. You knew we could have worked all this stuff out and all that." It's like, I know, and I just couldn't wrap my brain around any of it. I had come to the end of it, and that's where I was at. I was legitimately, I honestly was. If she had been standing there, that would have been, yeah. I just didn't even think about the baby monitor. It just didn't even click on me. And so, in a weird way, all my kids had a spot in stopping all that. Not
Right.
only did my wife. And I thank God every day. Man, I look at my family today and think, man, look at all that stuff you would have missed. Even though it all ain't been great, because I went through the addiction after,
Sure.
the recovery and all that, but it is great. It's 100% great. My life has never ever been in a better position as far as the people that I love. I could care less about monetary stuff and all that kind of thing, and it matters to people. It does a little bit. It has to matter to us a little, but we don't elevate it to a point where it drives what we do. To the level we're going to drop everything else for that. But that's what I would do for my family, right? So I'm talking to my wife, and obviously my daughter, she was in her crib. She didn't have any clue. My boys weren't old enough to have any idea about what was going on. So I go up to this facility. Well, I guess maybe I should walk that back a little bit. Trying to think where I should take this.
Tell you what, think for 2 seconds, because I've got to hit a couple of people, because I think that this is key.
I got to do something real quick anyway, man. I got to get something to drink, so I'm gonna hide my.
Good, get something to drink real quick, and I just would like to say to Lansing, who lost his brother, took his life on his birthday. That's heartbreaking. It really is, and I'm astounded by the number of people who have been touched by this. The number of people in the comment section who are talking about how this personally affected their life. I can't imagine that. I have a brother and a couple of sisters, and I can't imagine how hard that has to be. I did see that you said, there were some bad days. Just talk about them. When those bad days come, don't bottle that stuff up inside. We joke about it here on the boat. It's not a joking matter, but there has never been a psychologist or a psychiatrist that said what you need to do is keep that bottled up inside and don't tell anyone, because that really makes things better, because it never does. And to William, who lost his son, this is just, again, the number of people. It's honestly amazing. YT said that YT is a survivor, used to be a cutter, and also said that recently he or she, I don't know, I'm terrible at that. Every time I pick one direction, I go the wrong direction. But YT said that YT had to get rid of family ties because it had just become too toxic a situation. And we hear that a lot. We really do. I want you to know that one of the things we say here often, there's an old expression that you can't pick your family. We say the hell you can't, right? For real.
Exactly.
If the world didn't deal you the best hand possible with a family, then make your own. And if that sounds odd to anybody, then stick around, because we really have put together a group of people here that care for one another. Folks, like we started the show by me saying I was on the phone with somebody until 3:30 in the morning last night, because this is my family. And I know that my bobbleheaded partner feels the exact same way. This is, you can choose your family. You could choose your brothers. You could choose your sisters. If you didn't get the one you want, then build yourself a support family, a support crew that'll be there for you, because that is something that without a shadow of a doubt works. And Jonathan Hicks, Jonathan, please do not beat yourself up. I too attempted this, and when I look back on it, it was the most selfish thing ever. But something, there really is a Jekyll and Hyde thing for a lot of us that goes on with addiction. And you start to realize that the things that were being done back then The drugstore are writing checks, and oftentimes we're forced to cash them. But that for those of you who don't, if you're new to the lifeboat, I'm a convicted bank robber. I'm a fairly articulate and fairly intelligent guy who robbed a crap load of banks, right? Nobody in their right mind does that, right? Nobody in their right mind attempts to take their own life. But that's really what drugs do, right? They make sure that you're not in your right mind. So you're in a great place now, and you're a good dude. So please don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up. There is a reason that the rearview mirror is this big, right?
Yep.
And there's a reason that the windshield is this big. Get all of that stuff from behind, leave it in the rearview mirror, and just focus on the future. So
exactly.
You don't have cotton mouth. You're back. You've had something to drink.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys. I was starting to smack my lips. I had to get something, man.
Happens to the best of us.
Oh, hi, Mark J. First time here. Good to see you, bud. Anyway,
welcome to the lifeboat.
Yep, welcome. I'm sure you're probably getting smacked with welcomes in there. Anyway, it usually happens. Yeah, guys. So I look back on that whole situation, and I step back, and I'm like, what got me to that point? Why did I start going down that road? And you know what? I still don't know. I honestly don't. And I'm not sure that. I think for me it was little stuff just building and building and building to the point, and I was holding it all in. Is what was happening.
Boom. Yeah, because I was about to say, can I ask you one question? How many people did you talk to about what you were going through? Because I think that's the common denominator always. Yep. Is that the people that bottle stuff up inside and don't talk about the fact that they're hurting. We get to be this society, and I know we got people all over the world, but in this day and age, we're all supposed to be, you know what I mean, self-sufficient, and we can handle anything, and man, sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
But I know when I look back on mine that's I wasn't discussing where my head was with anybody.
Yeah, you just don't. And well, you do if you want to stay healthy. That's the thing. When you find yourself in a mental capacity that you're no longer healthy like that, once you get to that point, it's most likely going to take some sort of an incident or some sort of a family member to really just like smack you over the head. Wake up, tell me what's going on, type of thing. Because if you've decided to do stuff like that, let's face it, guys, if we really wanted to, you can make it happen, and that's why the time before that is so important, to be able to, and I'm talking years before for a lot of people. That's why it's so important to keep an open line of communication to people that love you. And if you don't have, quote unquote, a normal support system, well, there's one right here that can help at least a little bit. And there's a number there in the bottom left-hand screen that can get you to somebody that's going to at least listen to what you're saying. Right. And how you're feeling. And a lot of times, just like with addiction and what we're talking about here, a lot of times you need that moment of clarity. And that's true with a lot of things in our life. So if you can get that moment of clarity, I mean, my gosh, it's so huge in everything that you're doing. Because until you do, you're looking through things through a lens of a whole lot of bad emotions.
Desperation, bad emotions, right?
All of it. And your vision gets so clouded that you don't even know. You just don't even know what direction to go or any of that. And that's why I say sometimes it takes a traumatic situation that might break you up to be able to get you to understand where you're at. It's like, have you guys ever seen like a battlefield somewhere with a bunch of, like firearm smoke and stuff, and then all of a sudden you see a tank just roll right through it and it all disperses, right? It's kind of that same feeling, that cloud, you're inside that cloud, and then all of a sudden something happens and boom, it's all in the open. And that's really what happened with me. And that's kind of where I got. But talking to my wife and everything through all of that, and obviously I decided to go get some professional help, which was the right decision. I think that's, I don't ever tell people what to do, but that's never a wrong decision in my opinion. But so I get over here to this facility, and they have really, really strict rules, just like they should for people that are in this situation. I mean, you don't get to wear shoes with shoestrings. You don't, if they even let you have your shoes. I actually had sleep apnea at the time, and I had to fight to let me use my CPAP machine.
Right. Because it's got tubes and all kinds of things that,
and,
sure.
And I understood. I didn't even like argue with them. I just like, is there anything we can do about this? Because I shouldn't be going to sleep. If you guys, I just stopped myself from doing that. Now you want me to go in here and do this? It was one of those situations. But that and the electrical outlets in places like that, they have locks on them. So even plugging the machine in would have been a deal. And I'm a person that sleeps with a fan. So I mean,
right.
All that stuff is now taken away from me, and it was very uncomfortable. But and I mentioned to you guys, or I think I mentioned to Tommy. It was after the show 2 nights ago. I have an uncle that's an ordained minister, and that ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me, because he was able to come visit me just about any time he wanted because he was my clergy, right? And even though he wasn't, he had the credentials to where, obviously my dad, it was my dad's brother. He's a wonderful man. I mean, I can't tell you how, man, he's just one of those uncles that, man, you know what I mean? That you could tell really care about people and their family. And that was him. But anyway, he would take the time, because I was over in a big city, Indianapolis, and he lived there at the time. So that even made it a little bit more convenient. But I was able to see my family in that aspect outside of visiting hours, which made it a little easier for me. But during those visiting hours, when they would come up and visit, my mom and my dad and my wife came, and my kids were too young. And you look across the table at the family, and they're looking at you like, why? How did you get there? How did this happen? And all that. And the first thing, and I could tell, especially with my mom, she was taking a lot of the blame, and she didn't have to say it. Did I do something while he was growing up? I could tell those thoughts were going through her mind. I mean, she didn't have to say it. I just looked at him, and obviously I'm bawling like a baby. I'm like, it's not your fault. None of it. It's me. And not everybody's there. But I say that so you guys understand that this is not just about you. Matter of fact, a lot of it isn't about you. It's about the people that are around you, people that you love, which, yes, that is about you. So it's all in a symbiote circle. But make no mistake, you hurt yourself, you're hurting your family in the worst possible way. Because now they have to carry that within the rest of their life, wondering, should I have done this or should I have done that? Did I do something to him while he was a kid, or she was a kid? Did something I said or do, or did I not point him in the right direction? All these things start going through your family's mindset. And my wife, was I not a good wife? And none of that was true. They were wonderful. I mean, they were. It was me, right? And I don't think that I ever lost sight of that, even at the beginning. But I was still in a mindset that I was just done. I really was just going to say, hey, I'm selfish. Bye.
But you bring up a good point. The fact that, especially parents, things like that, they say, boy, what did I do wrong? What did I do as a kid? I saw a comment from Trisha Ann that said, this is not restricted just to people that abuse drugs. No question. This is something that permeates every walk of life and every aspect of life. And it is definitely not something that is confined just to the addiction community. The reason that we lean heavy on that is because the kind of the nature of the show here. You guys are catching it on a night where this is the head subject matter, but we talk a lot about living your best life. But the one of the things, other than the fact that everybody here truthfully does care for one another, the other thing that binds us all together is that, with few exceptions, everybody here is a recovering drug addict. So, but you're right. And if I don't want to make it sound that, like this is something that only happens to, to people who use drugs, because most assuredly it happens to everyone.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I think I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of the video, but just understand, guys, that it's not just an addiction. Obviously, there's lots of people out there that go through a lot of different things, right? And they don't necessarily, the bad things don't necessarily have to come from an addiction. And like Tommy said, I know that's kind of where our minds go because of who we are and what we've been through. But just understand that your family is going through it with you. Whether you want to see it or talk about it or not, they're there. They might not even be there in front of you. They might be across the country, but I promise you they're with you.
It's such a recurring theme too, that just no matter what we talk about, and again, like Tricia was saying, this isn't just a drug thing. This is always a mental anguish, or in some cases even a mental illness. Kind of a situation where you're just so far gone, in your own mind, that you don't see any other avenue, for escape or for regress. But just like addiction and just like everything else, it always seems to come back to communication.
Yes.
The people that talk about what's hurting them are people that usually don't, pick a permanent solution to a part-time problem,
right.
A temporary problem. The people who communicate tend to stay sober. We've been doing this lifeboat thing a while, right?
Yeah.
And the people that get sober and stay sober are the people that show up here. We're here every night, and they're the people that show up and say, hey, I'm having a bad time. I really feel like using. All of a sudden, people sort of rally around, and their new family, their chosen family, start saying, hey, I've been there, man. This is, this too shall pass. And we all start sort of, giving people advice. But the more I see
it's communication.
In everything, it always comes back to bottling things up. Mm-hmm. The more we hold stuff inside, the more danger we're in. And whether that danger is from self-harm, or it's from divorce, or it's from anything else, drug addiction, alcoholism, any of the topics that, we talk about living your best life. We also talk about a lot of things that make it so that you're not living your best life.
Right.
And if you're communicating with the people that you care about, it just seems to really iron out a lot of these problems.
Well, it's kind of like this, guys, and this is how I would say it. He said everything, explaining why I'm transparent with everything I do, because I'm able to talk about it now. And when I do that, it's very, very liberating, and it's very, very therapeutic. Okay? There's a lot of therapy involved in that. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. I don't care if you're talking to the wall. Sometimes you just need to verbalize it. Let yourself hear what you're thinking. Okay?
Amen.
And it might sound crazy, but if you got to go in a room somewhere, shut the door, and talk to yourself in the mirror, do it. Because your mind is looking at that, and they're seeing it just really does different stuff in your brain. And I'm not going to go into the biological and the chemical firings and all that, but there is something going on there, guys. Okay? The more senses, your 5 senses that you have, that you can bring into the party, the better off you are. Because you will remember things better, you will understand them better, because you will be able to relate them to one of your senses. And this is no different. No different. I can tell you right now, I remember the temperature when that happened. I remember, any of that. I remember what the house smelled like. I remember picking my daughter up and that baby smell you get, right? We all know that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I remember that from that day, from picking her up. I remember that. It's just burnt in my head. So that's why I say, really try to, connect with your senses that were going on at that time, because it'll help.
You want to hear a couple of good ones, Mark?
Yeah, go ahead.
Trisha Ann says, and if someone gets standoffish, pray for that person. One of the reasons that my brother Mark and I do this is because the normal model of group therapy that we came across so often when trying to get sober forces individuals to come out of their shell in a way that a lot of people aren't happy with. There are people who don't like public speaking, right? And you think, well, what does that got to do with sobriety? Well, when you go to a meeting and there's 75 people there you've never met, and they would like you to stand up and tell them what's going on and what problems you're having, for a lot of people, that's very difficult. So this is one of the reasons the Lifeboat came into existence, because even people who are standoffish can type into a keyboard. And I love what Mark said. I would encourage those people to speak out loud while they're typing. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
But just reaching out to people in this way. And then Jonathan Hicks said, yeah, communication is so important, but I do think some of us have been raised to think that we have to be able to handle stuff.
Yes.
It's hard to talk. At least I struggle with that. Jonathan, so many people struggle with that. And, every day this gets reinforced with so many people, right? Don't talk about it. You just handle your stuff. We talk about a lot, with addiction, but the type of thing where I'm coming up on 7 years sober. Yeah. And if I tell the people that I love the most that, they're going to go, I am so proud of you. Yeah. Don't tell anyone else in the family, though. Let's not, make a big deal of it, because, it's drug addiction. Yeah. And I'm not mad at them. I get it.
No.
I understand where they're coming from. But you know what? I'll be damned if I'm going to be that guy, because I have learned that what we're doing right here keeps me, and it keeps my bobble-headed partner Mark sober as well. Coming here and doing this every single day is really one of the key parts to our sobriety. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. And even suicide falls into that, right?
No question.
Honestly, if you can talk about it, you're at the very least, you're giving yourself a chance.
Well, YT said in a comment earlier that after his attempt, the family didn't want to talk about it and went back to business as usual. And you know what? It's so
That's
easy
hard.
to just be angry at every family that takes that approach. But I think so oftentimes, they got raised the same way Jonathan Hicks is talking about, right? We don't talk about this stuff. Just keep it down, right? Let's not talk about Tommy. He went to prison. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on in families, not in this family.
Right.
Exactly.
This
family here, we don't play any of that BS.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. When your family's involved, obviously, it really does take on a different aspect. It just really brings it in. But that's who's going to get you healthy most of the time. It's going to be your support system, whatever support system you got in. But mental health is the same as, in my opinion, when we're talking about things like this, is very similar, because with addiction, it really does fall into a lot of that, and they overlap in a whole lot of different ways.
No question.
And
no question.
When I was looking over, across the table from my family, and I could, when you look at somebody and you can just see, you can just see how mentally anguished they are to see you sitting there in that position. It brings a whole nother level of understanding of how much these people love you. And it lets you know. It really does. And I really do feel sorry for people that don't have that. I've been very, very blessed. But again, I have to say, you can find that. I promise you. And again, a good stepping stop is here. I know me and Tommy keep saying that, but it is. The chat itself has proven it over and over and over and over again.
Well, and new people who are here just saying things. If this doesn't hammer it home.
Yeah.
Fair Lady Crimson says, I was told tears don't help anything. No crying.
Yeah.
Shows weakness. Tell you what, tears help a lot. They are the telescopes that we view God through. Tears do amazing things. They wash away so much. And then Cheryl, is that Barger? Cheryl Barger says, this if this isn't on a t-shirt somewhere, good Lord, it needs to be. She wrote, I recover out loud because people die in silence.
Oh, wow.
I'm reading that one again.
Oh, my God. That's a good one.
I recover out loud because people die in silence. Cheryl, that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. And yeah, I know. That's a great one. And that's what you get in the chat here, honestly. And that, don't get me wrong. That's a very, very, that's probably got to be close to the top quotes that we've ever had here. But
yeah,
it's but that's the kind of people are willing to say those things here. But
I love that.
yeah, and let me tell you something that I figured out that, it's been my experience, and this probably isn't true for everybody, but for most people, when they're talking about this stuff with their families, and you get that reaction where they just go back to status quo. You guys understand why they do that? You ever asked yourself why? I'm sure you have, but for me, it's because I look at them and they don't want to admit that they could have possibly had a little bit to do with that.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that they ever did. That could be like with my family. No, it had nothing to do with anything I was going on in my head. But for a lot of people at that point, if you're looking at your parents and the family's been just programmed that way, they don't want to feel guilty. It's guilt. That's the biggest emotion there that makes families do that and makes families ignore what the real problem is, because they think if they can sweep it under the rug, it's just going to go away.
They also have no idea, how to help. Yeah. We talk about this often with addiction, but it goes hand in hand with mental illness or mental anguish or anything else. Try explaining addiction to someone who's never been addicted, right? It's the unexplainable. Right. Why would you do something is going to hurt you? So whenever you try to have a discussion with those people, they say, just gems of wisdom like, well, just stop doing it. Right? You know what I mean? Like, that's what you get, because in their head, it's just as simple as don't pick it up, don't do it. And you get the same thing with people who are struggling with depression or mental illness. That, well, you just got to get up and shake this off. Yeah. Oh, well, hell, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
I should have done that a couple of months ago. I guess I'll just get up and shit.
Yeah.
It's that they have no idea what to do. So they just try to get back to the routine and pretend that it'll be good now.
And don't get me wrong, guys. I understand why, right?
So, yeah.
Especially like if you're talking to your parents. That's probably the hardest one when we're talking about this, because they have such a big influential part in our lives, and they know, because society has programmed to think that they failed if we turn out bad, right? So if we start doing things that are going to not be quote unquote part of what's real in society, society's going to look down on them, aka the rest of their family and their parents. So that's where all that, helplessness and guilt is probably the two biggest things there that will keep people from communicating, because they feel the guilty part of it and they don't know what to do about it. So they feel helpless. And so what do? They don't talk. That is such the biggest issue. And this goes with the addiction right along with it. All of that. I'm talking life in general. We're talking living your best life stuff right now, because that's what it is. If you can do things like that, get yourself to a mindset and understand that, you can get past that. Because like mine, the medical issues I had me locked in my house for I don't know how many years. That right there in itself is enough to push somebody over the edge. And there's a whole lot of stuff we could talk about on that, but the detail there really probably doesn't matter. I can just say it, and I know you guys understand it. It's and I think, and what I want people to understand is that if you think at all that you're starting to feel like this at all, start digging into it now. Okay? If you don't understand why you're feeling a certain way, ask somebody. I mean,
reach out, question.
Or even this right here, guys.
Yep.
Okay?
It's an amazing device.
You not only is it the most disgusting thing you can have in your hand, but it's the smartest thing on the planet. So you got to learn how to navigate it, obviously. But what I'm saying is you can find answers, okay? Don't let it fall back into, I ain't got nowhere to go. Because you will feel like that at certain times. But just just start the seed now in your mind, knowing that, hey, no, I don't have to say that, right? But yeah, so.
By the way, Angel, when this is over, right, there are 2 emails in the Dropbox. One is to my bobblehead partner, and the other is to me. Mine is CaptainTommyScoville@gmail.com, CaptainTommy@gmail.com, and BlueCool52.
Yes.
At gmail.com. That only took me 9 months, people. How's that? It's the first time I've gotten that right in 9 months. I'm not even kidding. But please reach out to either of us.
Yes. We will find.
I'm not just saying that. Reach out, because you're obviously in a tough spot, and we've been in that spot.
For people that have been here for a minute, have heard us already say this, but for people that haven't, we actually have stopped live streams to help somebody with this situation.
We have done that
because it took both of us at that time, and we recognized that. And Tommy was on stream, and I just said, "Hey, man, we need to kill this because we got to go, fix this." And he agreed. I mean, so we just peeled off and did what we needed to do. That's the kind of thing that I want people to understand, because that's what you're going to get here. It doesn't have to be that extreme thing that we're talking about. It could be something as simple as, man, that woman over there called me a drug addict today. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Say that. If that bothers you, say it. We'll try to give you what we know about these kinds of things. And we're not medical people. We're not, medical professionals. We don't have any degrees or anything like that pertain to this at all. We just have been through, this is our life experience. And I was talking about this the other day. I'm going to start compiling a number for people that want to email me, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of the screen of how many cumulative hours or days the crew has of sobriety.
I love that.
And it will,
I really do.
It'll just continually just uptick, and it'll let people know, hey, we had that many hours of advice to give.
Tingling.
Yeah.
No lie.
Yeah.
I'm tingling. That is such a great concept. I cannot even begin it.
Yeah.
That is, oh man, what a cool concept.
So I'm thinking about I'm going to figure out how to get a ticker up there and have it just rolling. And when people email me, I'll add just what'll happen. I'll just add one person to the list is what'll happen. And it'll be like a 24-hour thing, and it'll just continually go up. And you'll be amazed at how many hours of advice that you're going to be able to access.
Yeah. Trisha Ann said, my family walked away. Why? Because I prepped.
That's a hard one.
It's just downright sad. But I will say, again, what I said in the beginning, I don't know who they are, but they say that you can't choose your family. We say, why not?
Say it different. Yep.
Yeah. Why not?
Yep.
Build yourself a family. I assure you, I'm not going anywhere because you decided to prep. Really good chance I'll stick around and
you could kick
that you want to be prepared.
You could kick your dog across the room, and I might get mad, but I ain't going nowhere.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? We're still going to be here.
Correct. We're not going anywhere. And amazingly, this is going to be a sad end because we're at the top of the hour. And people, for those of you who have been on the lifeboat a long time,
oh no, cat!
Squirrel is angry at me. Oh, she's not happy. But you will be back tomorrow night, people. If this was your first time on the lifeboat, I really appreciate you stopping by. I can't thank my bobbleheaded partner enough for coming on and talking about a subject that, number one, is so freaking important, and number two, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's more fun to talk about.
I will
to come on here and to just bear it up.
I appreciate that.
Stuff, I appreciate you.
I know.
And,
I just
on a very personal note, I thank God that you didn't succeed.
Thanks, man.
Because you mean the world to me.
Well,
so
thanks, brother.
Really happy that didn't. Happy that damn baby monitor was on. You know
yeah, and
really good stuff.
I'll go more into the latter part of my issue there at the end. Past after that happened, where I moved on, how I moved forward, and drugs actually comes into that. So we'll talk about that later.
Mark J, nice to meet you too. I hope to see you back here on the lifeboat. Same bat time, same bat channel. People, we will be back 23 hours from now. And you know what? We're here 365 days a year. Yeah, true story. We do this every single day. Why? Because we need to. And how else are we going to run into our family of thousands of people if we don't come here and do it every single night? I am Captain Tommy Scoville. And on the other side of the glass,
I love you all, guys, honestly. I'm reading some of the
story.
Comments. I'm sorry. I love you all. You guys are so awesome. So anyway, Mark Wade.
Now and the next time we see one another, we have a simple assignment, just one. Reach out and try to save somebody. Good night, everybody. We love you.